Pickens is the more explosive wide receiver. So if they do travel, you'll see Slay travel with him. But I think from a standpoint of protecting Devonta Maddox, you may see more zone.
Carlos Do. What up, baby? How you doing? Paul Mancini, thank you for buckling up. William Stark, good to see all our chat room people. Good to see our next guest. Who got the Herb, Glenn Erby, USA Today Eagles Newswire, joining us here. It's been a while, Glenn. How are we doing today?
Rick, good to be back. How are you today?
Doing good, man. I got my Philly red on just like you. I got the Red October fever, man. I'm converting over to the Phillies bandwagon. Hopefully you guys have room for me.
Always room.
Yeah, man, it's going to be another live atmosphere this weekend with the Keystone State, the World Series going on. We missed you last week. The Eagles were on a bye week. Let's get your finger on the pulse with where they are emerging from the bye. What do you like? What do you want to see get better? What do you think about this trade deadline about a week from today? What's on your mind with the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think at this point, it's just preparing for the stretch run. We know the bye came this year a little earlier than it did last year, so they'll be playing 11 straight weeks of football. So at this point, you just want to see better tackling, more decisiveness from Jonathan Gannon in terms of his scheme. Hopefully, you'll see the offensive line return. Everyone's healthy. Andre Dillard's back, so you'll have a full roster. In terms of the trade deadline, listening to what you said, I would only give up picks for someone like you were saying, Tevin Coleman or something like that. In terms of anyone else, if you need a bigger back, you already have Trey Sermon on the roster. So if you wanted to get away from the rugby-style quarterback sneaks, you elevate Trey Sermon and maybe you sit Boston Scott because you still have Kenneth Gainwell. So I think from that point, it's about getting more efficient with the things they're already doing, trying to make moves with the roster. But if you can't, not forcing anything and getting prepared for the 11-week stretch run in the postseason.
If it's not running back, Jay Glazer reported Howie Roseman's going to be making some phone calls this week.
Correct.
What position, and you mentioned Dillard, John McMullen on the last show said the Raiders have possibly shown some interest in Dillard, and they could dangle Clelin Ferrell, a defensive end. Jabril Peppers, a safety, has been talked about.
Correct.
Kick returner, special teams is an area of need. Where might Howie Roseman explore these phone conversations?
Well, I think you can never have enough good pass rushers. So I think from that standpoint, you could see him trying to bring in another pass rusher. It may not be Brian Burns, but someone like Ferrell or another solid, veteran pass rusher will help. I think if you can upgrade the safety position, it doesn't necessarily have to be a starter, but you saw when C.J. Gardner-Johnson went out, the play dropped, so Kayvon Wallace isn't necessarily it. Reed Blankenship isn't necessarily ready. So you can see a move at pass rusher, safety. I think the signing of Greg Ward to the practice squad probably alleviated any need to trade or acquire someone for the return game because he can return punts and kickoffs. So I think from that standpoint, if Howie does make a move, it'll either be for safety or a pass rusher.
Yeah, I was reading the Eagles Newswire. I think I got this stat off of your website. Greg Ward, he's averaged 5.7 yards per punt return in his career. Since 2019, punt returners with at least 20 return attempts, that's 49. He's ranked 49 out of 51. So not exactly lighting the world on fire. Covey's at 6.6, had a couple of muffs. I mean, is he like one muff away from being replaced, do you think?
Not necessarily, but he's not a player outside of special teams. Britton Covey's not a player you're going to put in the game. If something were to happen to Pascal or Quez Watkins, you surely could put Greg Ward in the game, and you surely understand that he'll be able to make plays, and he'll be able to make plays in the crunch time. So I think from that aspect, if he's healthy, and if he was healthy all summer camp, I'm not sure Covey makes the roster or is even on the practice squad. So I think you have to put all those things into consideration when breaking down what's going on.
You mentioned Quez Watkins, and I have here, he only has 9 targets, 6 catches through 6 games. We saw that week 2, that big 54-yard bomb. I haven't seen any deep downfield throws from Jalen Hurts the last game or two. And, there's a little bit of debate going on here at the Football Playbook. Some of our guests are saying, well, hey, if you're up by 14 points all the time, why expose the playbook? Why open it up? Why show your ace if you don't have to? My theory is, heck, I watched the Dolphins they're testing the field first quarter early, often showing the defense what real speed looks like, because now the safeties are backing up. Now the corners are playing even more cushiony, and they got to respect that speed. Quez Watkins is real fast. I mean, why not flash that in the first quarter, take a deep ball threat, even if it's incomplete? I say it works wonders. Others are saying, hey, let's keep the playbook hidden. Where do you sit in that argument?
No, I agree with you. I think that's more on Jalen Hurts. And we talked about that earlier in the year. You can't have a situation where we understand you have A.J. Brown, you have Devonta Smith, and then you have Dallas Goedert. So in terms of targets, you're going to work down that three. But you have to target Pascal when he's in the game. You definitely have to target Quez Watkins, because it'll get to the point where defenses aren't covering him. Now, I understand that that's not going to happen. Everyone's going to get covered, but there's no reason for a guy that fast, a guy that explosive to go games where he just gets one target or none at all. So that's more about Shane Steichen and Jalen Hurts, making the attempts. Like, I think that's the one thing he needed to improve on, and that's something he still needs to improve on. So we appreciate you being efficient. We appreciate the non-negative plays, but like you said, take a deep ball on a first down or a second down and see what comes of it. At worst, you back the safeties off.
Yeah, and Steichen, I think, has done a very good job overall. I mean, it's a nitpicking, probably the only criticism I have of the offense, quite frankly. And I think, if things keep revving the way they are, I could see Steichen get a head coach interview with the Carolina Panthers maybe this offseason. Talking to Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire, USA Today, here on the Football Playbook. Let's talk about defense, Glenn. It's been a while. I asked you about this a few weeks back. Jordan Davis, he's up to 35% of the snap count. He has 135 snaps. He's averaging about 22 and a half snaps per game. He's being utilized primarily in that three-man front as the nose tackle right there over the center. Do you think, coming out of the bye week, is this kind of maybe a little bit changing of the guard where we see him eat into Fletcher Cox snaps? And can we see Jordan Davis maybe a little bit more in the four-man fronts?
For sure. I think in the most respectful manner way, you're seeing the changing of the guard. You already see where they'll start the games out with the five-man front, and Davis will start in the 3-4. But I think it's a win-win for both. So you give Davis more snaps, you allow him to start assuming that lead defensive tackle position, but you also save Fletcher Cox. So it's a situation where, depending on the numbers, you don't necessarily have to release him or move off from him. So the ascension of Jordan Davis could save Fletcher Cox and save a few more years to his career. So I think that's a situation where you'll start to see week 8, week 9, 10, 11, Davis plays more snaps, and he'll eventually be the lead dog at that position.
No, I agree with you there. And so with that being said, let's talk about Kaiser White and TJ Edwards, who have really been kind of cornerstones on the defense, but kind of flying under the radar because everybody else around them is playing so well. And Kenny Pickett's, he's not really, when you think Kenny Pickett, people don't like automatically assume a scrambling quarterback,
Correct.
But he really can pick up first downs with his feet. And I think you saw like TJ Edwards and Kaiser White, almost, they were using like this diamond in one box defense where the Mike linebacker would shadow Kyler Murray when they played the Cardinals because, he has that scrambling ability. Shifting gears now to this Keystone State matchup with the Steelers coming up Sunday night, where the Eagles are 11-point favorites. Do you think they can employ a similar type of strategy, knowing that, Pickett, we saw him his first game, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and he hasn't exactly been lighting it up throwing the ball through the air. So do you think that they could play a similar type of strategy as we saw against the Arizona Cardinals?
I think so, and I think it's a perfect strategy. I think you'll see a situation where Pickett is similar to Daniel Jones, and where he's sneaky athletic, but he's a very athletic quarterback.
Good
so
point.
I think you'll see a situation where White and Edwards try to keep him in the pocket. He's one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the league, but he's still a rookie. So I think from that standpoint, keeping him in the pocket allows for your pass rushers to do what they do, and you can now do that without having to blitz. So I think that's a perfect defensive scheme heading into Sunday.
Let me ask you about these weapons, because we had Jim Wexell on from Steel City Insider 24/7 Sports, and he said something interesting to me. And he said, because I asked him, I said, who is the Steelers' number one wide receiver? Like, who is Darius Slay going to be matched up on? Because on paper, Deontay Johnson gets paid like the number one guy. But if you go off of performance, George Pickens really looks like the number one guy. Oh, by the way, you got Chase Claypool to be accounted for as well.
Correct.
But he said something interesting. He said a couple weeks back when the Steelers played the Patriots, and he was forgetting the cornerback's name. I'm forgetting the cornerback's name. Whoever their number one cornerback is actually followed Pickens around on both sides of the field. Wherever Pickens went, the Patriots' number one corner went. And I'm trying to like project how the Eagles secondary is going to match up, because we talk about the Eagles Batmans. I'll tell you what, man, Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, this might be a better trio of wide receiver target. Pat Freiermuth, not bad either, by the way. I'm thinking, you tell me how you see it. I'm thinking Slay on Pickens. I'm thinking Bradbury on Claypool, because Claypool's the bigger guy. And then I'm thinking Avonte Maddox, which sounds kind of funny because Maddox is really technically cornerback 3.
Correct.
And Deontay Johnson technically is wide receiver 1. But I would probably play Maddox on Deontay Johnson, put Bradbury on Claypool. How would you mix and match it?
I mean, the way you put it sounds good, but I think you'll have a situation where this year, because of the arrival of Pickens, Claypool is playing more in the slot. So I think the scenario you'll see, and I wrote about it this morning, Pickens is the more explosive wide receiver. So if they do travel, you'll see Slay travel with him. But I think from a standpoint of protecting Avonte Maddox, you may see more zone, or you may see more coverage over the top from the slot position. So I think from a standpoint of one-on-one matchups, when you're playing man, Claypool is a way bigger receiver than Maddox is a cornerback. So I think that's a matchup to watch. And I think you'll see a situation where Epps or Gardner Johnson are over the top on that. But I think you can definitely get away with putting Slay one-on-one with Pickens, seeing how that goes, putting Bradbury one-on-one with Johnson, seeing how that goes. But you definitely, your problem or your matchups nightmare becomes Chase Claypool and Avonte Maddox one-on-one, especially in the red zone or something like that.
Yeah, we haven't seen the Eagles secondary be outmatched all season. There might be some mismatches here for the Steelers in this one.
Correct. This is a perfect scenario. I mean, Pickett's accurate. You know, you have big receivers. All three are kind of big and physical. So if there's a scenario where things could get out of hand or a bit nerve-wracking, it could be Sunday.
Surprisingly, though, Najee Harris, you know, I didn't realize how poorly he was performing this season until I looked it up, you know, looking at this game. He's only averaging 3.3 yards per carry. His backup, Jalen Warren, is actually performing pretty well. Now, the Steelers' offensive line has taken a lot of criticism. There's an argument to be made there that they have one of the worst offensive lines in the entire league. Is this a case? I know the Eagles' run defense on paper isn't ranked the highest, but that could be a little bit deceiving because they've been so far ahead that teams have had to throw the ball and play different kind of matchups. But to me, I think, you know, you can easily shut down the Steelers' run game, let Pickett try to pick you apart, but it's going to be guaranteed at least one, maybe two interceptions. If you just let Pickett sit back and throw, the rookie's going to make some mistakes here.
Correct. I wrote about that this morning as well, and I think that's the perfect defensive scenario. I think you set it up to where you put all your guys in the box. I think that's why you put together such a secondary. I think that's why you paid the money and you went and got Gardner Johnson and you have Bradbury. So you load the box, you make your rookie quarterback beat you if he can. Then he did pretty well. But you don't allow Najee Harris and Warren to gas you for 4 or 5 yards per carry when they haven't done that all season. So I think it's a scenario where you'll see them move up, force the quarterback to make reads, force the quarterback to make decisions on the move at a quick pace. Yes.
All right, Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire USA Today here on the Football Playbook, breaking it down with you here today. Let's go to the Eagles offense and how they might attack the defense, because, you know, Jalen Hurts, he actually has struggled a little bit against the blitz, statistically speaking.
Correct.
However, the Steelers' blitz has been non-existent since TJ Watt went down, and Alex Highsmith, I think he leads the league in sacks with 6.5, but 3 of those came in week 1 when TJ Watt was healthy and lined up on the opposite side of them. Since then, I think Cam Hayward has a sack. Highsmith has a couple sacks. Other than that, this pass rush of the Steelers, who, oh, by the way, they've led the league in sacks the last 5 consecutive years. That is not going to be the case this Sunday, Glenn. So how is the Eagles offense going to attack this situation? Will the Steelers try to create a blitz? Will they sit back and let Jalen dink and dunk with those slants like we've seen in the past? Or what's the plan of attack here for the Steelers?
I think the scenario, and we talked about this before, the addition of A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, I'm not sure you can do that. And you really can't do that with T.J. Watt not in the lineup. So I think you'll see a situation where they try to produce a pass rush organically, but you don't want Jalen Hurts running wild either. So I think you'll see a situation where they sit back, they kind of come with a passive approach, and they try to make him beat them from the pocket. I think you'll see the same situation from the Eagles standpoint. They'll do it the same way they did it against Dallas. So I think you'll see them pick a defender, and then they'll RPO, and they'll do everything based off of that pass rusher or that defender. That defender could be Hayward. So, he's a down lineman, but in similar fashion to Michael Parsons, you'll see a lot of RPO. You'll see a lot of RPO where he's the guy having to make the decisions. And then when they need a big, a bucket per se, they'll go to Goddard or they'll go to A.J. Brown. So I think from a defensive back standpoint, the Steelers aren't as strong as they were previously. Minkah Fitzpatrick can't cover everyone, and he'll be responsible for Goddard as it is. So I think from that standpoint, you'll see a situation where they may have to approach it from a passive style as well.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Steelers D-line. That Larry Ogunjobi, too, he's a pretty athletic guy, opposite of Cam Hayward. You got those. That's a pretty good duo. And then in the middle, they added Myles Jack, who has kind of been one of the better, I think, offseason acquisitions. He leads the team in tackles. He seems to make big plays. And, when you talk about first, second, and third level, you got Hayward up front, Myles Jack in the middle. And you mentioned Minkah Fitzpatrick at the back end of that secondary. Those are 3 big-time playmakers there.
For sure. And I think you see a situation where they're actually facing an offense that has big-time playmakers too. So even though they're pretty good, they'll have to already deal with their responsibilities up front. So I think that's where the offensive line depth, the offensive line dominant plays a part. So I think you'll see a situation where Jack may not be in a position to make as many plays because Landon Dickerson, Sumalo, Kelsey, they both do a good job of getting to that second level. So that'll be something to watch as well.
All right, last one on defense. I look at the cornerbacks. They're okay. Nothing special, nothing great.
Correct.
Where is the weak? Who's going to take advantage of these mismatches on this end? Cam Sutton, Levi Wallace, who I think just came back off of a concussion last week and then got hurt again. I don't know if he's playing. And then Akilo Witherspoon, I think. I mean, again, I guess Cam Sutton is the number one corner there, but I mean, I would think Devonta Smith is going to have a one-on-one mismatch here to take advantage of.
Correct. You're correct. I think you'll see another situation where he could have another 10-catch performance. So definitely, I could see Tomlin and the Steelers defense rolling the coverage to A.J. Brown again. You'll see a situation where he'll feel comfortable putting Minkah Fitzpatrick on Goddard. So you'll see a situation where the coverage gets rolled to A.J. Brown more so because he's the physical receiver. Devonta Smith should eat, and it'll be a perfect opportunity for Quez Watkins to get involved and the running backs as well.
Yeah, I think this is a great game for Devonta Smith to have another 10-catch performance and or another big Quez Watkins play. I think this is here's my prediction, Glenn. We're going to see a trickanery. I think we're going to see a trick play coming out of the bye week. I think they're going to have a trick play installed, and it might be the only trick play we see again until the Super Bowl. So there's my fearless forecast. I'm going to save my score prediction for the end of the week. Last time I checked, Eagles 6-0, -11 at Pittsburgh, 2-5. They're a funny 2-5 team because their 2 wins are against the Bucks and the Bengals,
basically,
right? And they beat Brady and they beat Joey Burr, but Philly has not lost to Pittsburgh. Oh no, I'm sorry. This game's in Philly. They have not lost to Pittsburgh in Philly since 1965, favored by 11. What's your final outscore prediction here?
I think they're rolling. I think the break allowed them to get healthy. I think you'll see them take advantage of a rookie quarterback. I see them winning going away 35-21.
35-21. That'll cover the spread. That'll make Eagles fans happy. That'll make everyone happy when we come back next week and talk about it. Before we let you go, though, I wanted to get through that because we are at the bye week. I wanted to pick your brain on this NFC East, man. It's unbelievable. Like, we're really going to see, like, everybody was calling it the NFC least. Here we are 6 weeks in. You got the Giants 5-1, Cowboys 4-2. They're not going away. Commanders are even, 3-4.
Correct.
Are we going to see 3 teams emerge from the NFC East into the playoff hunt?
I think that the Eagles and Cowboys are for real. Of course, I'm unsure about the Giants. I think that they're winning close games. I think that gives you the situation where you see Daboll and Wink Martindale are both probably worth 2 wins apiece. But I'll need to see more from New York. I think if Tampa Bay and other teams in the NFC don't improve or don't get their, they don't rectify their style of play, then you could. But I think you'll only see 2. I see the Giants cooling off somewhere down the stretch.
But they are they 6-1 now?
They are correct.
So, I mean, technically, they can go 4-6, right, and still win 10 games.
They'd have to fall off the cliff to not make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, but I can see the cliff coming.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Hot take from Glenn Erby here on the Football Playbook, because I checked the Coach of the Year odds down there at the Ocean Casino Resorts. Nick Sirianni was favored, but not by much. Brian Daboll, number 2 in the Coach of the Year odds.
I mean, I guess you can get that with an improving team, but I think you have a team that's undefeated. You have a team that's met all their expectations. So I think there's just a situation where New York has been so bad over the past few years. You have some people feeling bad, but Daboll has done an excellent job. Both coaches, Wink Martindale as well. Probably Wink Martindale more than Daboll, but we'll see going down the stretch.
The tank commander, Wink Martindale. What about though? Mike McCarthy, I think, deserves some kind of props. I mean, everybody credits Kellen Moore. What a great job he does. Everybody credits Dan Quinn. What a great job he does. But I mean, like, they lost Dak Prescott. They survived that scare. They're still in the hunt. There was all this talk about Sean Payton in the offseason, and Mike McCarthy, I mean, say what you want, he's been pretty resilient, no?
He's solid. He's a loaded roster. I think they still commit too many turnovers and too many penalties for him to be that way. And I think you have a situation where, like you said, Dan Quinn has turned this defense around. Dan Quinn has reinvented himself. So I think that takes some of the votes away from McCarthy as well.
Dan Quinn now probably the hottest head coaching candidate next offseason hiring cycle, I think?
I think he'll get the first job for sure.
Yeah, I agree. How about one last one in the NFC East? We've talked tirelessly about the Jalen Hurts contract extension. The Giants declined to pick up the 5th-year option on Daniel Jones. The franchise tag would be, I believe, $31 million if they wanted to tag him. Is this a done deal? Like, they're just moving on from Daniel Jones, or has he resurrected himself? Granted, they dumbed down the offense to limit his mistakes, but is this a sustainable brand of football that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll would want to move forward with, do you think?
For sure. I think so. I think you're talking about a system quarterback. He's found his coach. I think he's a poor man's Josh Allen, if you say so. And I think in the coach's eyes. So from that standpoint, if you can get him to take a team-friendly deal, which I think you can, and Saquon Barkley can continue to play the way he's playing, then you go from there. I think you get rid of Galladay. Get him some more weapons on the outside, some better weapons on the outside. And if he continues to progress the way he is, I think he could be a solid quarterback. I don't think you break the bank for him any more than you do for, say, Jalen Hurts. But if you could sign him to a team-friendly deal, you do. If not, you go get another quarterback.
All right, fair enough. Last one here. Commanders media, I saw they're already writing the death of Carson Wentz. They don't want to see anymore. They saw enough. He's on the PUP. He's actually eligible to come off the game after the Eagles, which I think is week 10.
Correct.
At that point, the Commanders will probably be pretty far out of it. They did draft Sam Howell, I think, in like the 3rd or 4th round. Have we seen the end of Carson Wentz in Washington now? Where does he go from here? The 3rd team in 3 years. Is his days as a starting quarterback officially outnumbered, do you think?
I'm not sure. I mean, he's making $32 million, so I'm not sure you want to put him on the bench just to put him on the bench. I mean, you play how maybe to see what you have, but you also drafted him late, and if you're going to play him, you probably would have played him over Heineke. So I think you'll see him come back. You'll see anything's possible. I mean, is he done as a starter? I don't know. You can see him walk away as well. He's never not started. So there are a lot of plausible things that could happen.
All right, we shall see. We'll check back in next week when Glenn Erby joins us from the Eagles Newswire USA Today. Glenn, tell the great listening audience at home what you got on deck, content-wise, where to find all that great content, and what you got flowing.
Just preparing for the Steelers, Rich. You can find this over at the eagleswire.usatoday.com. You can find me at the cover2nfl.com on Twitter, and just preparing for a postseason run, Phillies, and everything great happening in Philadelphia.
Oh, man, I can't wait. I hope there's some kind of parade or celebration or something, man, so we can link up down there on Broad and take part in the shenanigans. So we're getting closer, though, my man. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the week, and we'll get back with you next week. Okay, my man?
Appreciate you guys for having me on.